Welcome to our webinar this evening. I'm Michael Barasch, and I'm joined here this evening with several attorneys from my office, with Dr. Paul Oberstein of NYU and with Liam Lynch of NYCOSH. And we're going to have a discussion about bile duct cancer, about colon cancer, and we're going to be, and gallbladder cancer, of course, because these 2 months are the special awareness months as designated by the American Cancer Society. So it's an excuse for us to help spread the word, specifically to the 9/11 community, because there are some deadlines. And while many of our clients are listening tonight, we're hoping that you will reach out and help us spread the word about the July 29th deadline that's only 5 months away.
The first thing that I hear from the non-first responder community in Lower Manhattan is, I'm sick, but I don't deserve anything. I'm not a first responder. I just lived here. I just studied here. I just went to school here. I just raised a family here. Your presence here was an act of courage and resilience. The first responders, I'm in awe. But I also am in great awe of those who came back to a war-torn neighborhood that was clearly toxic. We knew it, but you stayed anyway, and you allowed this area to grow and to become the hub. But it's your courage and your resilience that brought this place back. So please, I urge you, access what you are owed.
Over the last decade, we have all fought very hard so that everyone has access to the health care that they need. It is very important that every community member who lived anywhere south of Houston understands that you are covered. You are part of the group of people that have guaranteed health care if you have a 9/11 related disease.
I was on my way to work when the first plane hit. I was working for Goldman Sachs. I actually worked for them for a total of 21 years. I always thought that those programs were geared for the firemen and the police officers, but I'm one of the victims of that.
So we have taken on, with all of these advocates here, the task of trying to get everyone to understand that they have rights, and it is imperative that they sign up.
One of the really surprising things about our research is that an event in 2001 can continue to have echoes 17 and 18 years later, such that it is as though never smokers are smoking 2 packs a day.
My law firm represents over 15,000 people in the 9/11 community. And the majority right now are first responders, but every single day we hear from more and more survivors because we're doing this outreach. Basically, to be entitled to compensation, you need to prove that you were below Canal Street or on the Fresh Kills landfill, either caught in the dust cloud on 9/11 or for 24 hours during the month of September 2001, or for 80 hours, which is just 2 full work weeks between 9/11 and May 30th of 2002. And you need to get 2 people to sign an affidavit attesting to the fact that I saw him. I worked next to Joe. I went to school next to Francis. That's all it takes. There's a reason why my firm takes all this so personally. I have 6 young people who work for me who have lost a parent or a spouse as a result of World Trade Center toxins. 9 people in my law firm, including me, are cancer survivors. The information you get from us is going to be compassionate, and it's our pleasure to help you.
Welcome again to our webinar this evening on 3 specific types of cancer that we are so lucky to have an expert in this field, Dr. Paul Oberstein of NYU Langone. Doctor, welcome. And I can't tell you, thank you so much for joining us and giving us some of your time tonight. It's all yours now.
Thank you. Good evening. So I'm Paul Oberstein, and I'm Director of GI Medical Oncology here at NYU, and I specialize in treating GI cancers with a specific focus on the really hard ones and the ones that need better options. So we do clinical trials, and we're trying to figure out how to change outcomes for these tumors. Many people don't know what cholangiocarcinoma is. It's a very long word. We often abbreviate it as CCY. The bottom line is what you're looking at here is on the right is a very simplified schematic of what your liver looks like, with the pancreas coming together, and then they go into this pink thing at the bottom. That's the intestine. And what you can see here in the little schema is that all of these organs have ducts that merge together. And so it's a very highly trafficked area of the body. It's also something where if something goes wrong, unfortunately, it can push onto many other things and cause really significant problems. And so the green things in this picture include the gallbladder, which is the thing on the bottom, which lays right below the liver, and then the ducts inside the liver, which are green. It's a little hard to see them. They can all develop cancer. These are relatively rare cancers. There's around 12 to 20,000 cases in the United States every year. They're counted different ways because there are ducts in the liver and outside the liver. But the short version is that it happens. It's a rare thing, but when it does happen, unfortunately, it can cause these symptoms of abdominal pain, weight loss, and if they block those ducts, someone can get jaundice or change their color. The big challenge is that if they get large and they're not detected, they're very difficult to treat. So I just wanted to show one picture which will give you a hint. I think this is what we look at pictures all day, so I think it's important for someone to understand what this actually looks like. This hopefully matches that schema a little bit. I'll just give some guideline here. The thing you're looking at on the left side of this person is the liver. It should be the sort of lighter color, but then you see this quite dark thing in the middle. That's large. That's around 3 to 4 inches large, so like a softball size. And that's a tumor. The thing on the right, just for context, is the stomach that's full of white things. And so this is a tumor that arose in the bile duct of this very young person. It's clearly large. It's too big to be removed. He was around 42 when this happened. And this is what I treat. Unfortunately, it's very young, very challenging. Ultimately, what I do and what we look at is we try to understand what's driving these things. What are the mutations? What's abnormal? And this person happened to be very fortunate in a way that we identified a mutation, which I wrote here, but obviously is not for the audience to remember. A mutation, he started on a clinical trial in 2017, and 3 years later, he's still doing great. He gets this pill. The drug he took was FDA approved last year, partly based on him. And he's really fortunate. Just to give some perspective of what I look at, so these are all, and obviously, again, this is illustrative, all the different mutations that can happen in these different tumors throughout the bile ducts. And so what we try to do is figure out what mutations are there, what does a person have, how do we target it, how do we treat it, with the goal of being as effective as we were for that previous patient. But I just want to point out on the right over here, the best thing we can do is catch this early. And this really requires a lot of awareness. These are rare tumors. People don't think of them. Certainly not every time that a person has a gallbladder problem or pain is it cancer, but it's really important to think about these options, think that it's an option if someone has symptoms that persist, and that allows us to be able to see them, maybe get them into surgery and cure them if it's early enough, and if not, get them on treatment that can help them live longer and live better. And so that's gallbladder and cholangiocarcinoma. I had a big task tonight. They wanted to cover colon cancer as well. Colon cancer is a much more common cancer, and you can see the numbers here that are U.S. estimated numbers, around 150,000 people in the U.S., and maybe 10 times as many will be diagnosed with colon cancer in 2020. I guess we think these are projected numbers, but we hope they're accurate. Around a third of those patients will die of it. So, it's not always as fatal as the cholangiocarcinoma, but obviously has a huge impact on people and their lives. There are some numbers here. You can see that for a man or a woman, there's around a 1 in 25 chance of developing colon cancer in their lifetime. This is a very low rate in young people, but it gets older. It gets bigger and bigger as someone gets older. So in terms of risk factors, which is very important. So age is a common risk factor in many cancers. As people get older, the chance of something turning into cancer goes up, and that's just the way it is. Of course, it doesn't mean that everyone who gets older will get cancer. And so we look for the other things that we can modify, that we can contribute, we can decrease the risk of that cancer. Genetics is important. It's very important for persons to know what their family history is, if anyone's family had cancer, what kind of patterns might be there. We know that diet and lifestyle have a huge impact. Their smoking has gone down, thankfully. Alcohol does increase the risk of colon cancer. There are other dietary things that also contribute. Exercise is probably protective. But what I highlighted, it's in italics, I guess, here, is that there are many, many unknown factors. And there's obviously a lot of research going on in populations, but especially things which are very relevant to this community, such as occupational and toxic exposures. And so we know that that has an impact on the cells everywhere in the body, including the intestinal cells. They impact the food we eat, they impact what our body does with that, and we know that that definitely has an impact on the rates of colon cancer. The good news, I would say, is that we have made progress. So this is, again, these are what we look at all day, and no one needs to get into the weeds here, but this is a trend of mortality, of death rates from colon cancer among men and women in the United States going back around 80 years, or maybe 90 years by now. And what you could see is that age adjusted, the incident, this is not incidence, this is death. The mortality of colon cancer has been going down for 50 years among women and around 30 years for men. So there are clearly things that are working. Unfortunately, these curves are starting to flatten out at the end, and we don't exactly know why that is. This is something that's very important, and again, it's a lot of detail, but if you look on the right side from the bottom, these are trends in colon cancer deaths among people 65 and above. The middle, which are going down, as you can tell over time, we want them to go down. The middle one are people between the age of 50 and 65, in which it's going down a little more slowly. Unfortunately, if you look at people between the age of 20 and 50, the top one, you can see that the incidence of colon cancer is going up over the last around 20 years, since 1990, so 30 years. So that's still less common than in older people. We don't know why. We don't know if that's exposure. We don't know if it's diet related. We are definitely working on trying to reverse that, but we have to be vigilant and make sure that we keep these trends. This is why detecting it early matters so much. So we stage colon cancer based on 1, 2, 3, or 4. And you can see on the right here, the 5-year survival in the stage 1 colon cancer is 90%, 88%. In a stage 4 colon cancer, it's 12%. And so if we can detect this early, we can make all the difference for that person for mortality. It's tremendously important. Just quick take-home points. I think both of these cancer types, cholangiocarcinoma and gallbladder cancer, as well as colon cancer, are unfortunately important causes of sickness, and they can lead to death among many Americans. The best treatment is always early detection and avoiding behaviors that increase the risk of cancer. And for this, we say it means screening for colonoscopy. For gallbladder cancer, it means being alert to the symptoms. But unfortunately, once they are detected, the key thing to determine is how can we get a person treated as quickly, as comprehensively, and as aggressively as possible to help potentially cure it, or at least prolong their life and quality of life, and help them live longer. Thank you very much.
Dr. Oberstein, that was great, very informative, and you really dummied it down for us non-medical people. Before we move on, I did want to, you mentioned early detection so many times. The World Trade Center Health Program, which is run by NIOSH, has determined that all 3 cancers that you've talked about tonight, as well as 65 other cancers, there's a presumption linking those cancers to the toxic exposure at the World Trade Center. So this is a perfect opportunity to go to Liam Lynch.
Thank you everyone for having me. My name's Liam. I work for NICOSH, New York Committee for Occupational Safety and Health, but I'm here today to talk to you about the World Trade Center Health Program, which is for 9/11 responders and survivors. And in the program, you can receive care in all states. So it's not just in the New York metro area. You can receive care in every state. There are doctors who are specialized in treating 9/11 related conditions. They understand the unique circumstances of these conditions. They have experience in caring for this population. And this program provides annual medical monitoring visits for responders. So you can come in for an annual checkup because, like we've been saying, early detection saves lives. It really does matter. And then if you are diagnosed with, there are over 100 different illnesses that are connected to 9/11 exposure. If you are diagnosed with what we call a certified 9/11 related health condition, which is both physical and mental health. So it's not just physical ailments. The program covers a lot of aerodigestive conditions, 68 cancers are covered, but also mental health conditions as well. So, panic disorder, anxiety disorder, PTSD, which, is unfortunately in this community, in this population who is exposed to this kind of trauma. So it's both for physical and mental health conditions. The treatment is fully covered. So this is a no-cost program. Your medical tests, your doctor visits, your surgeries, prescription drugs, and then there also is a robust benefit counseling program as well. All of this treatment is covered in the program. And even if you feel that you have very good health care, that is completely, comprehensive, there are benefits to this program. Maybe you have co-pays for some of your conditions where you're not going to have co-pays in this program. And you can still continue seeing your doctor, if you love your general practitioner. However, these doctors, like I said, are experienced and specialized with this population. And sometimes there is unique presentations of the disease that they can care for in a specialized way. And the other thing I want to talk about with the program is that, should you opt in, this is an option, but your patient data can be used for extremely valuable research so that we know how to care for responders in future disasters and exposures in the future. But also, this program is not static, right? It evolves and grows with its patient cohort. So they're constantly doing, research that could potentially add new conditions in the future. So there are certain conditions that, we know are not currently covered in the program, but they could be in the future. And so your participation in that data could be extremely, extremely valuable. And, even if you aren't sick right now, early detection, and the reason why I think we're talking about early detection, here so much is that there is what we call a long latency period for some of these conditions. So what I mean by that is you could be exposed to asbestos or any host of that toxic contaminants that were down there back in 2001, but your development of a condition may not happen until 20, 30, 40 years later. And we are not even at that 20-year mark. We're approaching that 20-year mark. So we might see more aggressive conditions pop up in this population as we get down the road. And so we really want folks to sign up.
All right, so we're now up to this. We've heard the word presumed used several times. It doesn't matter if you have a family history of any of these cancers or respiratory illnesses. It doesn't matter if you smoked. There is a presumption because of the statistical data linking 68 cancers and many non-cancers to these toxins. And we've just put up the most common cancers, but I was speaking to a rescue worker today who told me about his bladder cancer and his kidney cancer. And I said, is that all? He goes, yes. And then I said, have you ever had a skin exam? He goes, oh yeah, I had basal cell cancer too. Well, that's considered cancer. It's actually the most common cancer in the 9/11 community. We were very honored to represent Detective James Zadroga, for whom the Zadroga Act was named. The Zadroga bill passed by Congress in 2011. It created both the health program that Liam spoke about and the Victim Compensation Fund, which we're going to get to in a minute. And it's important that everybody realizes here that you don't have to prove anything. If you prove that you were in the exposure zone and you had the cancer diagnosed or the respiratory illness diagnosed at the right time, you're going to get treatment from the health program and you're going to get compensation. When they did Jimmy Zadroga's autopsy, they found in his lung tissue ground glass, asbestos, lead, benzene. These are all known carcinogens, which gave doctors the right and the evidence needed to link all these illnesses. Let's talk about deadlines. Lee London, would you talk a little bit about the deadlines for registering in both the health program and the Victim Compensation Fund?
Sure. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. So as Michael stated, and our firm has done a lot with lobbying Congress last year to make sure that the Victim Compensation Fund and the World Trade Center Health Program has been extended to outlive us all. Many of these conditions that Michael and Dr. Oberstein spoke about could develop 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and the fund will be open for anybody that has that 9/11 exposure that was there from 9/11, 2001 to May 30th of 2002 if you have that exposure. Now, deadlines that are coming up involve if you are part of the World Trade Center Health Program and you've been certified for a World Trade Center physical condition, you have 2 years from your date of certification to make a claim under the Victim Compensation Fund. They're two separate programs, and many people think that they're connected, which they are, but being registered in one does not mean you're registered in the other. So many, first responders, survivors are part of the health program, could have been certified in 2011 and don't know that they have 2 years to make a claim. There is a deadline coming up in July 29th of 2021 that we want to make sure that even if you're sick, even if you're healthy, that you register for the Victim Compensation Fund to preserve your rights. Because I speak to clients every day that went for an appointment at the health program, 8 years ago, and they could have been certified and not even know it. So we want to encourage everyone to register for the health program and the Victim Compensation Fund, even if you're healthy, just to protect your rights, because you never know what's going to happen down the line. We don't want people starting this process when they have that oh my God moment. We want them starting it when they can obtain their proof of presence, when they can obtain their medicals and bring it to the doctor, get evaluated by people that know 9/11 exposure to see the patterns and what goes on.
All right, James, would you please speak a little bit about the Victim Compensation Fund personal injury benefits?
Absolutely. Liam did a great job of explaining to you that there are benefits from the World Trade Center Health Program that cover the cost of your treatment and medication for any 9/11 related illness. But as Michael and Lee were saying, there is a separate program, the September 11th Victim Compensation Fund, that actually provides monetary compensation for various things. And the fundamental part of every claim is a claim for your pain and suffering for your 9/11 related illness. As you see here on the screen, the awards range. When we're talking about serious cancers like colon cancer and gallbladder cancer, awards are for our clients are typically in that $250,000. That's what the VCF is awarding for what they call serious life-threatening cancers. But awards vary for all different types of conditions. They range from $20,000 to $90,000. Typically, what you see tip the scales as far as getting an award on the higher end of the range is medical evidence showing the severity of a condition. But pain and suffering is just one portion of the type of compensation that's available. You can also get reimbursed for out-of-pocket medical expenses that you had to pay if you were coming out of pocket for treatment before you may have known of the World Trade Center Health Program. And there's also claims for earnings you may have lost because of your 9/11 related cancer. So for people who missed work and have disability determinations, whether it be from their private insurance company or from a government entity like Social Security or workers' comp, if you've been found disabled for those conditions, then we're able to help you obtain your loss of earnings that you incurred as a result of that 9/11 related illness.
All right, Dana, let's start with you and then go into Dom to talk about death benefits and deadlines for the wrongful death cases.
Thank you, Michael. Why don't I start with the deadline? The deadline, I think it's so important for families to know their rights. One of the things that everyone has to know is that these programs are available to them, but there are registration deadlines. And if you miss them, that can create problems, and a family who has the right to bring a wrongful death claim can lose that right. Currently, the deadline to register a claim under the rules is 2 years from the date of death. But so many families did not know that they had the right to bring this claim when they lost their loved one. And so 1 in 3 families that comes to us more than 2 years after the person passed away. So those claims would be untimely. Some people passed away before cancer conditions were even covered by the VCF. So their families had no reason to know at the time that they passed away that there even could be a claim. And then, as Liam talked about how this is not a static program, as new conditions were added, as cancers were added, suddenly those people became eligible, those families became eligible, but they didn't know. The special master recognized the unfairness of that and opened a window. That window is open until July 29th, 2021. So that really applies to everyone who lost a loved one more than 2 years ago. After that date, they will not be able to register a claim, and those claims will be barred. So we are trying very hard to spread the word, to make sure that news reaches all families about this deadline so that they can register in time. And I'll let Dom talk about the awards that the Victim Compensation Fund pays to families who've lost a loved one.
Thanks, Dana. The benefits that are available from the VCF for families who've lost somebody are substantial. The VCF provides compensation for the victim's pain and suffering. The VCF provides a compensation for a surviving spouse's a loss of companionship. It provides compensation to other dependents for their loss of support from the victim. It provides some compensation for something called replacement services, meaning that the VCF provides compensation to families for the loss of the services that the victim provided for the household, such as doing chores, home repairs, maintaining the cars. If somebody in the household was disabled and the victim was very helpful to the disabled member of the household, the VCF provides compensation for that. And it also provides a reimbursement for funeral expenses. All of those different categories of damages can add up to very substantial awards in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, sometimes in the millions of dollars. So, you know, if a family is entitled to those benefits, we definitely want to get the word to them if they've never registered a claim that they have these rights available to them.
I want to circle back to Dr. Oberstein in light of something Dom was just talking about, and that is, well, it's something we've all been talking about, early detection, the importance of annual exams and colonoscopies. So my question is, I mean, we've heard this from doctors who specialize in breast cancer, how worried they are that women have been postponing their annual mammograms during COVID. We've heard this from dermatologists. People aren't going in for their full body annual skin checkup, notwithstanding the fact that skin cancer is the most common cancer right now in the 9/11 community. Have you seen instances, and I know when people get to you, it's already because they have cancer, but have you heard about people postponing their colonoscopies?
Absolutely. So we've seen it on both ends. You know, one is people who are not doing their procedures. The procedures are very complicated and they're worried about risk of COVID, so patients are not going in for it, or facilities that are closed or facilities that are not as accessible and not as easy to get to. And so people are definitely delaying colonoscopies. I think the more concerning thing for me is the ones who have symptoms and are not seeing the doctor because they're worried about going in or they're worried about exposure. And there's no question that if someone has symptoms or is not feeling well or has any of these early signs, they should get it checked out. I mean, COVID doesn't change the pace of other illnesses. But I think the screening tests are really critical, and we're all hopeful that things will pick up, that we'll make up for it in some way. But I mean, it's been a long time, unfortunately. And so I think it is critical to, you know, not assume that someone shouldn't get screening and to always discuss the risks and the benefits. There are some screening tests that can be pushed off by 6 months or 3 months, maybe, some that cannot. And I think it's important to discuss that with your doctor.
Dr.
The other thing I would just say, one other point, which I made it before and I want to make it again because it's a huge impact in our patients, is that very often people who are ill are noticed to be ill by someone around them, right? And so if you don't see someone frequently, you don't see them regularly, you don't see that they're struggling to breathe or losing weight or not themselves, you might miss out on a lot of those signs. And we really feel that the data has not come out yet, that we're seeing more people present late in disease than early in disease because they just haven't, you know, had the regular triggers, either social triggers or familial triggers to go in and see the doctor. And so That's a really important point, I think, and people need to think of other people and remember that, and reach out for help or reach out when you can help someone for that.
That's why we're doing this webinar, so that the 9/11 community understands how important it is. Do not postpone this colonoscopy, even if there's no family history.
So what should you do now? And I'm going to talk to you about this really from the perspective of what I see and what Dom sees representing families every day, because there are some important lessons there. And so first you see, share this information with support groups, make sure that your community knows, but make sure your family knows, because you don't want your family to be the ones who don't know that there's a deadline to register, the ones who don't know that they're entitled to these benefits. We have to, as members of the 9/11 community, we have to talk to our families and make sure that they know that this is there for them if something ever happens to us. And make sure they know where to go. Make sure they know who to call. Oftentimes we get calls from families and they say, my husband told me to call you. My wife told me to call you. And even at that very difficult time, it gives them the strength they need to reach out and get what they're entitled to. And then we can take it from there. Register for the World Trade Center Health Program. It's so important. Get in the program, early screening, you get the care you need, you get certified if you have a condition, and then you can apply to the Victim Compensation Fund. And getting in the program is the other important thing that you can do for your family. Because if you qualify, even if it's for a relatively minor condition like sinusitis or mild asthma, you will have done it and your family won't have to. One of the things we didn't talk much about is that you will have to find 2 witnesses who will say that they saw you at the site. As time marches on, that gets harder and harder. So you want to do that now. Now when you can participate in the process, now when these people are still around, now is the time. So secure your evidence and get in the program. See a dermatologist. It's an easy thing to ignore. Don't ignore it. You heard about the statistics. And get a will. Get a healthcare proxy. Families who have a will typically have an easier time applying to the Victim Compensation Fund. It's because the process is generally faster in getting somebody appointed as the representative of the estate. The person you name as the representative of your estate is the person who will be entitled to bring the Victim Compensation Fund claim. You will have spoken to them. They will know what they have to do. And a part of the award will actually pass through the will. And so you get a say in where it goes. Those are some of the important lessons we've all learned, and then spread the word. We're all in this together.
I mean, I think we've tried to make it obvious. We're here for you. We're really passionate about doing this and getting people into the health program. We do free wills for our clients. We really want to take care of you. Let us help you. But there are other really good lawyers out there too. They can take care of you as well. Don't try to do this on your own. It's really overwhelming. And I just wish everybody good health. Stay safe out there.